What if the absolute certainty of human extinction wasn't some future prophecy, but a past event, quietly, secretly filed away in a forgotten archive? Listen to me. I've just decrypted scattered, heavily restricted survival records from a reality designated as alternate timeline 0. These files, they detail a desperate, impossible struggle for existence, and I absolutely have to broadcast this explainer before the archive is sealed forever. Alternate timeline 0, the frozen shoreline. This isn't fiction. This is a blueprint of survival from a world pushed to the absolute, suffocating brink. For thousands of years, they thought the world ended at the crater's edge. Then, one generation decided to walk into the blue death. What they found wasn't land. It was an infinite, moving desert of salt. Let that sink in for a second. Imagine believing the absolute entirety of existence was confined to the burning walls of a volcanic crater. The sheer cinematic gravity of this decrypted text, it reads like an ancient, terrifying epitaph for a world that had to make the ultimate, impossible choice: burn alive or freeze in the dark.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, the crater's edge.
To even begin to understand their reality, you have to imagine being trapped inside a massive, volatile volcanic crater in what we know as Iceland. The archives define their breaking point as the thermal convergence. This is the precise moment the thermal pressure within the caldera reached its absolute unlivable limit. Think about the suffocating panic of that. The walls of fire are literally closing in on you. The air itself is turning to poison, just burning your lungs. It's the ultimate evolutionary bottleneck, right? Expand or suffocate.
Which brings us to Part 2, suffocate or expand.
This mandate pushed humanity entirely to its limits, and it perfectly illustrates the brutal binary extremes of their world. On one side, you have the Askja Caldera, a boiling, claustrophobic ticking time bomb. But on the other side, the outside world, freezing, infinite, and entirely unknown. To leave meant they had to forge carbonized steel harpoons from the volcano's heat and put on these thick thermal layered sealskins just to survive stepping into the void. There was literally no middle ground, just fire and ice.
Now for Part 3, the blue death.
As they crossed that threshold, the deafening panic of the crater gave way to the shock of a completely silent, freezing wasteland. Let's trace this great descent. It starts at year 0, with thermal pressure hitting that peak. By month 3, scouting parties form for the unthinkable. Then, month 6, the sheer, absolute terror of crossing a mile-high wall of ice. Imagine being a people who had never seen the outside world, ascending into blinding darkness. And finally, month 9. Arrival at the North Atlantic shoreline. And what did they find after descending that impossible wall? The archives just repeat this chilling phrase over and over. What they found wasn't land. It was an infinite, moving desert of salt. I want you to think about the profound realization washing over them. They had just discovered the ocean, but with no sun to guide them in the sky, and absolutely no trees to build ships. It was just this black, churning water stretching on forever. A massive, insurmountable barrier for a displaced generation standing shivering right on the edge of the world.
Moving on to Part 4, forging the iron whales.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the brutal pragmatism of this generation. Facing certain death, they found salvation in the macabre. First, they harvested these massive, curved blue whale rib bones to act as a structural frame. Second, they covered that towering frame with thin, hammered steel plates, utilizing the metallurgy they mastered back in the volcano. And third, they had to propel this impossibly heavy vessel using rhythmic oars synced to deep, resonant chants. It is a terrifying fusion of biology and metal.
Part 5, hunting for other hearts.
As these cold, heavy vessels hit the freezing water, Universe 01 officially entered its maritime era. But their mission fundamentally changed here. Escaping the heat was no longer the primary goal. Their new objective crystallized. They needed to locate the other hearts of the world. They were looking out into the pitch-black void of the ocean and hoping, against all odds, that someone else was surviving too. What started as a desperate escape turned into this profound, philosophical quest for connection in the dark. Which leaves us with a final, haunting question. If we are forced into our own maritime era of survival, what other hearts will we find waiting in the dark? Think about the fragility of our own timeline for a second. When our thermal pressure peaks, are we going to have the strength to cross the ice wall? And when we finally launch our own iron whales into the unknown, who will be out there waiting for us? Keep this archive in your mind. The shoreline is closer than we think.